Welcome to Daily Variety, your daily dose of news and analysis for entertainment industry insiders. It's Thursday, March 19th, 2026. I'm your host, Cynthia Littleton. I am co-editor-in-chief of Variety alongside Ramin Satuda. I'm in LA, he's in New York, and Variety has reporters around the world covering the business of entertainment. In today's episode, in our cover story segment, we'll hear from Ethan Schonfeld on his assignment to profile Miley Cyrus as she reclaims the legacy of Hannah Montana. Hard to believe, but yes, it's been 20 years since that show exploded like a fluorescent-colored supernova. Schonfeld's cover story is a real bangers, forgive me, and he brings the perfect Gen Z perspective to what it all meant back then and what Hannah Montana means today. But before we get to that, here are a few headlines just in this morning that you need to know. HBO has renewed Neighbors for Season 2. The quirky late-night show from A24 travels the country to dive into real-life disputes between neighbors. Manat, Phelps & Phillips has made a big bet on the creator economy. The law firm has recruited Ellie Heisler and 3 other lawyers from rival Nixon Peabody to beef up Manat's activity in the creator economy. Heisler's group represents such fast-rising stars as Quinn Blackwell and Maddie Matheson. Blackwell was just named one of Variety's 10 creators to watch earlier this month. And speaking of creators, showrunner Kenya Barris has teamed with Revolt TV and their off-script worldwide parent company to launch Revolt Labs. The goal is for Barris to help promising young creators hone their ideas and channel their talents. All of these stories and so much more can be found on Variety.com right now. And now it's time for conversations with Variety journalists about news and trends in show business. Ethan Schonfeld details his time with Miley Cyrus, and as a first-wave Hannah Montana fan, he was very happy to learn that Miley Cyrus is in a pretty good place in all of her worlds. But before we hear from Schonfeld, let's hear from Cyrus in her own words from Variety's cover story video, and that will be followed by my conversation with Ethan.
I couldn't imagine there being any other destiny for me. It felt like a perfect fit of fate, exactly what I was made to do and built for. The character and I couldn't imagine anyone else ever being Hannah. I would feel very territorial over that. That's me. That's an extension of myself. And like anybody else that has a fantasy, we all have our own Hannah. Hannah is what you brave and what you do in a way that sometimes, I always say she's the youngest drag queen. She's like, what do I want to do? But I need this other character to almost be armor, but I want the armor to be beautiful. What is that? And so that beauty can be whatever you want it to be. That could be what you do with your hair, your makeup, your wardrobe, but it can be deeper than that. It can be something that you kind of subconsciously switch that makes you feel like you're your ultimate self, but you don't leave your kind of everyday person behind.
Ethan Schonfeld, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Cynthia.
Ethan, your latest ambitious endeavor for Variety was a cover story on one Miley Cyrus, as it's hard to believe for those of us who were there, but the 20th anniversary of Hannah Montana is in fact upon us. And to mark this occasion, she's doing a special with Disney Plus. So let me start by asking you, Ethan, how did you find Miley Cyrus, the actor and singer and all-around multi-hyphenate, how did you find her to be in 2026?
She was lovely. I mean, I have this in the story, but she really is one of those stars that can walk into any room and everybody in the room will turn their head to look at her. It's rare to sit down with somebody like that in a public place for so long. And this is a celebrity that has a very personal impact on me just because I grew up watching Hannah Montana. And I have photos of me as a child running into her at a boutique store and taking a picture with her. I'm pretty sure I got her autograph. And so, a big theme of this story is growing up and how she has sort of taken her fans with her in that process. And I count myself as one of them.
How does it feel to you to now be witnessing this wave of nostalgia for something that you fully have firsthand memories of?
It's like one of the first things from my childhood that is getting the nostalgia treatment. And I went to the taping for one of the days when they taped the special, when she performed the Hannah Montana music. And I was standing surrounded by all these people that are, between 25 and 35 wearing the Y2K clothing and, with the wigs and the polka dots and the sequins. And Steven Horowitz, my Variety colleague, was there as well. And he said it looks like a Limited 2 just exploded.
The thing that really leapt out to me as I was reading your terrific cover story, published March 18th in print and online, was just how much it stands out that she seems very together in her life. She seems to be in a great place. She talks about her decision to embrace sobriety and just, let go of the things in the past that had caused her a lot of angst. Did you really feel that when you sat with her?
Definitely. I mean, one of the big things we talked about was she said that, when artists are figuring out what they want to do next, a lot of times they feel like they have to sort of have a clean slate and abandon everything that they did before for like a rebrand. And she was saying that she would rather be like more of a patchwork blanket, like, to sort of wear all of her past on her sleeve. She also has tattoos that are like these patchwork tattoos, which I thought was quite resonant. But her point of saying that was like, she really does embrace her past. And for a long time, there was this public perception that she was moving away from Hannah Montana, and because she wanted to have this sort of rebellious solo career and be considered outside of the Disney umbrella, which I think is partly true. I mean, she has quotes from around that time about Hannah Montana is dead and Hannah Montana is like buried in her backyard. And it was always said in sort of a tongue-in-cheek way. But in our cover story, she says quite bluntly, I never tried to kill off Hannah. She said that Hannah Montana still means a lot to her and has always meant a lot to her.
What did you find, Ethan, in terms of her areas of focus right now? Did you get the sense that it's more music, it's acting? Where did you get the sense of her career focus?
So she was quite vague about her future. I asked her about acting and about performing, because one thing that I don't know if a lot of people who aren't fans of Miley Cyrus know, but she actually hasn't done a big tour in over 10 years. And she's had these huge songs. I mean, her song from a couple years ago, Flowers, was a massive #1 hit. She won her first Grammy from that song. And she hasn't really played arenas. And she's done these private shows at the Chateau Marmont in LA. And she's done live shows, like she's been on, she performed on the Grammys and the SNL special, for example. But she talked to me about doing EMDR therapy and how that helped cure her stage fright, which was something that she struggled with for a while. But not to get anyone's hopes up, she did say that she does not see herself doing a big tour in the future, just unrelated to the stage fright. She doesn't like to be on the road for so many months at a time. She's quite a prolific artist. She's put out albums every couple years for most of her career. And so I wouldn't be surprised if she is working on another album and plans to do some performing around that. She happens to be the betting favorite when it comes to who will headline next year's Super Bowl. So I asked her point blank if she would accept that offer. And she said that there's a lot of pressure that comes with the Super Bowl, and she would really have to put that outside of her head. But she said that if she could make a Super Bowl performance something like the Hannah Montana anniversary, she thinks she could find it in her to do that. So maybe we will see her on the Super Bowl stage. Who knows? One of the major themes in the story is just about how everything in her life feels very aligned right now. That was something she said. She recently got engaged to her boyfriend of I think 4 years, who's a musician in LA. She talked a lot about how her relationship is private and her career is, in a place where it's very successful. She doesn't have to tour and she doesn't have to do a lot of these other things that she doesn't want to do. And going back to the theme of you get the best of both worlds, which is what Hannah Montana is about, being a superstar and then taking off the wig and having this private life. She talked about how she's finally at the stage in her life where she feels like she can have it all. Like she doesn't have to have these two extremes of, just the best of superstardom and then privacy, that she can actually sort of take what she wants and build her life around that. And so I think that's something that she hadn't experienced for a lot of her career, that she felt like she had to sort of create this public persona that was often very wild and didn't align with who she really was. And I think she feels much more at peace with where she's at right now, which is lovely to hear.
If you can say that at 33, you're not doing too bad. That's great. You, of course, always learn a lot about a person by their entourage and the people that surround them. What was it like in terms of setting up the interview, getting the time with her? You write in your piece about what it's like to be doing an interview in a public place with somebody who is so famous that everybody that walks by does a double take. Was that alone an intimidating factor in the interview, or are you just able to kind of tune out the noise?
It wasn't intimidating at all. She had a very warm presence. And in preparation for this interview, I had watched a lot of her previous interviews. And I don't know if she enjoys doing press, but she's really good at it. Something I respect a lot about Miley is that she's always embraced the messiness of growing up in the public eye. And, she had quite a lot of scandals growing up. She said in the cover story that she doesn't love focusing on the past, that she'd rather talk about the present or the future. But to her credit, she did talk about the past, and she said she didn't have any regrets. She didn't think a lot of the things that she apologized for during that era were necessarily apology worthy. And she's been able to talk about these things in a way that is not spiteful, but just reflective, in my opinion.
Ethan, let me close by asking you, you do such great interviews. It is hard to interview famous people in the sense it's hard to penetrate, and it's also hard to get things that people haven't read 100 times about the people. What do you find are the keys to interviewing really big stars?
Well, I think one of the things that applies to no matter who you're interviewing is you have to listen to them and not be afraid of the silences. And so a lot of the best quotes that you'll get from any interview are after they've already answered your question, and then you just look at them and say, like, really? Or something like that. Because I think they will open up if you let them talk. And I also think that with some of these stars, they're asked the same questions all the time. And so with Miley, we started the first 10 or 15 minutes of the interview just talking about the photo shoot that she had just come from, and like whether she enjoys doing photo shoots, and is that experience uncomfortable? Just, and we talked about like how she loves changing outfits and how that's one of the fun things about the job. And that led to a whole other area of the interview that I ended up using for the piece. So just try to be natural, I guess.
Good advice, Ethan. Thank you as ever. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cynthia.
As we close out today's episode, here's a few things we're watching for. Marked by Sophia opens on Friday. The A24 documentary revolves around fashion designer Marc Jacobs, and it is directed by his close friend Sofia Coppola. Jury Duty Company Retreat begins Friday on Amazon Prime Video. There's a new setting, but it's the same concept. A docudrama where only one person isn't in on the joke. It'll be interesting to see if it has the same pizzazz as the original series that was set during an actual jury duty process. Do not miss my colleague Kate Arthur's deeply reported story on what went wrong with the Buffy the Vampire Slayer reboot that has now fallen apart at Hulu. There's lots of finger-pointing going on. Kate got a hold of the original script for the reboot and sorts through it all. You can find that story on Variety.com. We love to hear from our listeners, so please send thoughts, gripes, and other feedback about Daily Variety to podcasts@Variety.com. Before we go, congrats to Dan Cazzola. He's been appointed Senior VP of Development for Endemol Shine Australia. He's based in Los Angeles, and he has a mandate to expand Endemol Shine Australia's business on this side of the equator. He previously worked for Endemol Shine North America and as a producer. Thanks for listening. This episode was written and reported by me, Cynthia Littleton, with contributions from Ethan Schanfeld. Sticks, snicks, hick, picks. Please leave us a review at the podcast platform of your choice, and please tune in Monday for another episode of Daily Variety.